Daniel and Emily Hart were known as the golden couple of Willow Creek, the kind of pair that people admired from afar and secretly envied. Their two-story house with white shutters and a perfectly cut lawn gave the impression of a life built on stability, love, and success. Emily, with her warm smile and gentle nature, taught at the local elementary school. She was adored by her students and respected by parents who trusted her with their children. Daniel, on the other hand, was an accountant with a reputation for being dependable and precise. Together they seemed like the embodiment of the suburban dream, a couple who had managed to balance career, love, and community involvement without ever breaking stride. On weekends, neighbors often saw them strolling hand in hand, their laughter drifting across the quiet streets as if nothing in the world could trouble them. They hosted small gatherings in their backyard, string lights glowing against the night sky while friends gathered around the grill. To anyone looking in, their marriage appeared not only solid but enviable. The word perfect was often used when people spoke of them, though perfection has a way of hiding cracks too small for the eye to see. For those who knew Emily closely, there were signs that not everything was as it seemed. Her once bright personality had begun to dim. She no longer lingered after school to chat with colleagues or volunteered for extra projects like she used to. Some friends noticed the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her laughter seemed forced whenever Daniel was around. She became more guarded with her words, as though afraid of saying the wrong thing. When asked if everything was fine at home, she brushed it off with a smile, her voice soft but unconvincing. The questions never lingered long. After all, who would suspect trouble in a marriage that looked so flawless from the outside? Still, whispers grew in quiet corners of Willow Creek. A neighbor recalled hearing muffled arguments late at night, though the details were never clear. Another friend mentioned Emily's sudden interest in taking long walks alone, something she had never done before. Even small changes, like her shifting wardrobe choices or her distracted mood during community events, added to the puzzle. Nobody could quite piece it together, but the sense that something was wrong became harder to ignore. Then came the morning that shattered every illusion. The news spread swiftly, carried from one doorstep to another in shocked voices and hushed tones. Emily Hart had been found dead in her own home. The story broke the very image of perfection that the couple had built, replacing it with confusion, grief, and suspicion. The same neighbors who had once smiled at them across picket fences now stood outside their homes in disbelief, wondering how such a tragedy could happen in a place so peaceful. The golden couple was no more, and in its place remained a mystery that would soon grip the entire town. Police arrived quickly at the Hart residence after Daniel's call for help, sirens breaking the quiet calm of Willow Creek. The scene they walked into was unsettling. Emily lay lifeless on the bed, her hair spread across the pillow in disarray, her skin pale against the white sheets. There were faint bruises along her arms, as though someone had gripped her too tightly. A broken picture frame rested on the floor beside the bed, shards of glass scattered across the carpet like tiny fragments of a hidden story. The image inside, a photograph of Daniel and Emily smiling at a summer barbecue, was cracked down the middle, splitting their faces apart. To seasoned investigators, the room spoke louder than words. Daniel told officers he had come home from work early and found his wife this way. His voice was steady as he explained, though his hands trembled slightly when asked to recount the details. Detectives began taking notes, immediately focusing on the timeline of the morning. Daniel claimed he had left the house before sunrise, as he often did to get a head start at the office. He insisted that when he returned a few hours later, Emily was already gone. Yet as investigators surveyed the house, things did not quite add up. There was no sign of forced entry at the front or back doors. Windows were locked from the inside. Nothing of value appeared missing. Emily's purse sat neatly on the kitchen counter, her wallet and phone untouched. A burglary gone wrong seemed unlikely. Instead, the crime appeared deliberate, the kind of act committed by someone who knew the house and, more importantly, the woman inside it. Forensic experts arrived and began their careful work. They dusted for fingerprints on the picture frame, collected fibers from the bedding, and swabbed beneath Emily's fingernails in search of DNA. Each piece of evidence was sealed and labeled, carried away to a lab where it would be examined under cold fluorescent lights. In cases like this, the smallest detail could mean everything. Detectives walked through each room, noting what appeared normal and what did not. Emily's shoes by the door were neatly placed, suggesting she had not left the house that morning. Breakfast dishes were still in the sink, a coffee cup half full beside them. It looked as though her day had started like any other before it was abruptly cut short. The absence of any ransacking raised further suspicion. Whoever had been in the house seemed to have come only for Emily. Neighbors soon gathered on sidewalks, their eyes following every movement of the officers. To them, it was unthinkable. Crimes like this did not happen in Willow Creek, a place people moved to for safety and quiet living. Yet here they were, watching investigators carry out evidence from the home of the couple everyone thought they knew. As the body was taken away, the house was taped off, its bright yellow barrier a stark symbol of the darkness that had entered. Already, murmurs began to spread. If there was no forced entry and nothing stolen, then who had the motive? The answer most people feared was the one detectives already suspected, the person closest to Emily, her own husband. Daniel's behavior in the hours after Emily's death became the subject of close scrutiny. To the untrained eye, he appeared calm, collected, even cooperative, but detectives who had spent years studying human behavior noticed the subtleties. His voice never wavered, yet his words seemed carefully chosen, as if rehearsed. When asked about his wife's habits, he gave quick, precise answers without the hesitation or reflection expected from someone processing fresh grief. Most concerning was the question he asked almost immediately, "Am I a suspect?" To investigators, that was not the question of a man in shock, but of someone already anticipating blame. Detectives widened their investigation into Daniel's life. His financial records quickly revealed a troubling picture. While his outward appearance suggested success and stability, his bank accounts told another story. He was drowning in debt, juggling overdue credit cards, and carrying loans far beyond his means. The most striking detail was a life insurance policy purchased only a few months earlier. Emily was the insured, and Daniel stood to gain a substantial payout. To detectives, it was a potential motive wrapped in plain sight. Friends and colleagues were interviewed, and a new portrait of Daniel began to emerge. Behind the image of a devoted husband, there were accounts of controlling tendencies. Emily's friends admitted she had withdrawn from social gatherings, often citing excuses that felt hollow. A colleague at her school mentioned she once arrived with a faint bruise on her wrist but brushed it off with a nervous laugh. One neighbor described hearing raised voices on more than one occasion, arguments muffled through the Hart's walls late at night. Though none of these details proved anything on their own, they collectively painted a troubling backdrop. The community, once sympathetic, began to shift in their perception. At first, Daniel was seen as a devastated husband robbed of his wife. But as whispers spread about his debts and the insurance policy, sympathy turned into suspicion. News reporters swarmed the quiet streets, their cameras flashing as Daniel walked in and out of his house under police watch. Headlines in the local papers branded him the grieving husband turned prime suspect, casting a shadow over his every move. Investigators grew more determined, combing through phone records, bank statements, and work logs. They questioned his alibi for the morning of Emily's death. Daniel insisted he had been at the office, but his time card showed inconsistencies. He had clocked in later than usual, leaving a gap in the timeline that he struggled to explain. When asked, he claimed he had stopped for coffee, but no receipt or witness could confirm it. For detectives, the pieces were aligning too neatly. A financially struggling husband, a conveniently timed insurance policy, and a wife whose life was cut short in a home with no forced entry. All evidence seemed to point in one direction, and Daniel was standing squarely at the center. Yet beneath the surface, there were details still unresolved, clues that would eventually complicate the straightforward story building around him. For now, however, the focus of both the investigation and the town's suspicion rested firmly on Daniel Hart. Just as detectives felt they were closing in on Daniel, a discovery shifted the course of the investigation. The forensic lab results came back, and what they revealed unsettled everyone. Beneath Emily's fingernails, traces of DNA were found, but it did not belong to her husband. The sample was strong, clear, and identified as male, yet completely unrelated to Daniel. The revelation complicated the tidy narrative investigators had built, introducing a new layer of mystery that demanded answers. Detectives returned to the Hart home, re-examining every corner with fresh eyes. Had they been too focused on Daniel to notice other possibilities? The broken picture frame, once assumed to be a sign of a domestic struggle, now seemed to point toward an outsider's presence. Fingerprints collected from the glass were run through databases, and while many matched Daniel and Emily, there was one partial print that did not. Suddenly, The case was no longer a straightforward tale of marital discord but a puzzle with missing pieces. Meanwhile, surveillance teams canvassed the neighborhood. It was a long, meticulous process of reviewing hours of footage from nearby businesses and traffic cameras. One recording caught detectives' attention: grainy black and white images from a gas station less than a mile from the Hart residence. On the night before Emily's death, her car was spotted pulling into the lot. It was late, long after neighbors believed she was home. Moments later, a tall figure exited the passenger side and walked away toward the direction of the Hart home. The footage was unclear, the face obscured by shadows, but the outline was distinct enough to narrow down possibilities. Investigators worked tirelessly to identify the figure. After combing through employment records and local sightings, they landed on a familiar name: Ryan Cooper, a handyman who often took odd jobs around Willow Creek. Residents recalled seeing him fixing fences, trimming trees, and offering repairs to homes, including the Harts. His presence in the community had always gone unnoticed, background noise in the calm rhythm of suburban life. Now he was thrust into the center of suspicion. Detectives quietly investigated Ryan's background and quickly uncovered connections to Emily. Credit card statements revealed she had been withdrawing cash frequently, amounts that coincided with Ryan's sporadic income. Phone records showed late-night calls between them, numbers hidden under vague contacts in her phone. To those piecing together the evidence, the implication was clear: Emily and Ryan had been secretly involved. Ryan's prints were soon matched to those found on the broken frame in the bedroom. This discovery tied him directly to the crime scene in a way Daniel never had been. Detectives confronted him, and though he initially denied everything, the mounting evidence made denial impossible. He admitted he had been inside the Hart home on the night Emily died, but his version of events would add yet another layer of complexity. For investigators, the case had taken a sudden turn. The narrative of a husband driven by greed and desperation no longer held firm. Instead, they faced a tangled web of secrets, betrayal, and hidden relationships that blurred the line between victim and perpetrator. Daniel, once considered the inevitable culprit, was no longer the only suspect. When Ryan Cooper was finally brought into custody, the town of Willow Creek braced itself for answers. Rumors had been swirling for weeks, and now, at last, people hoped the truth would be laid bare. Under interrogation, Ryan admitted he had been inside the Hart residence the night Emily died. His confession, however, was far from simple. He claimed Emily had asked him to meet her in secret, insisting she needed his help to escape a troubled marriage. According to Ryan, she had become fearful of Daniel and wanted a way out. What began as a desperate plan to discuss her future ended in tragedy. He said their meeting escalated into an argument, voices rising, emotions boiling over. He described Emily lashing out, and in the heat of the moment, he pushed her. The push, he insisted, was never meant to be fatal. But as she fell, striking against the bed frame, everything spiraled into chaos. Investigators listened carefully, weighing each word. While Ryan's version of events suggested an accident, the forensic evidence told a harsher story. Emily's bruises indicated more than a single shove; they suggested a struggle, one where she had fought to protect herself. The DNA beneath her fingernails reinforced this, capturing the desperate final moments when she clawed at her attacker. Ryan's story was compelling, but it was riddled with gaps and contradictions. The courtroom soon became the stage for the truth to unfold. Prosecutors painted Ryan as a manipulative outsider who had entangled himself in Emily's life and exploited her vulnerability. They described him as jealous, unstable, and ultimately violent. The defense countered by portraying Daniel as the looming shadow in Emily's marriage, arguing that Ryan was simply caught in the crossfire of a woman trying to break free. They leaned heavily on Emily's withdrawn demeanor in the months before her death, her isolation from friends, and the whispered arguments neighbors had overheard. For Daniel, the trial was a torment of its own. Though evidence had cleared him of direct involvement, his name was still dragged through the mud. His financial troubles and the life insurance policy became central talking points for the defense, casting doubt on whether the wrong man was sitting at the defendant's table. Even when Daniel was no longer formally accused, suspicion clung to him like a shadow he could not shake. Neighbors avoided his gaze, colleagues whispered behind closed doors, and his once pristine reputation was permanently fractured. Ryan was eventually convicted of manslaughter, the jury deciding his account of an unplanned killing aligned more closely with the evidence than premeditated murder. His sentencing brought some closure, but not the kind that restored peace. For Emily's family, justice felt incomplete. She had lived a life of kindness and quiet dignity, yet her story ended with betrayal and violence from someone she trusted. For the community, the trial revealed uncomfortable truths about the fragility of appearances and the secrets that lurk behind perfect facades. In the end, Daniel walked free but not untouched. He remained a figure of suspicion in the eyes of many, a man forever associated with the death of his wife. Ryan faced prison, a reminder that hidden relationships and reckless actions can spiral into tragedy. Emily's life was gone, and with it, the illusion of perfection that once defined Willow Creek. The case left behind not only grief but also a lingering sense of unease, a reminder that the darkest truths often hide in the places we least expect. Thanks for watching this episode of Crime Uncovered. If you found the story gripping, don't forget to like the video, share it with friends who love true crime, and hit the subscribe button with the bell icon so you never miss our next disturbing case. Every click helps us uncover more untold stories.